All right, welcome to week 2, and this is the 5th video of the class, and we're just calling this one Justice. So in week 1, we just started on the book, and we read 35, I think, pages of it, and we saw some very tragic situations. Families like Arlene were evicted repeatedly, and we're really just living perpetually on the edge. And we tried to do something to understand how this came to be, right? And so we had an exercise where you looked at all the different choices people made and how those choices caused this event, and whether or not the people involved were breaking a rule somehow. After that, I just asked a very broad question about the word justice. I just asked you, what do you associate with the word justice? And these two things are connected. I want to try to understand the events that happened to people like Arlene through the concept of justice. And again, I just want to reiterate this quote, this really great quote from Bryan Stevenson. The opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. So I think I want to try and understand what justice is in a way that will help us understand this quote as well. So I'm going to start by looking at just a few of the answers that were given in the exercise. Okay. So these are just some of the answers that were already entered by the time I decided to make this video. Don't worry if your answers are in here or not in here. Actually, the point is for you to start with your own associations and then try and merge them with other people's associations. And what we're going to see is that actually all sorts of patterns emerge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling words out and filing them under things that fit a pattern. So over here, anonymous, actually their very first word was sham. I think that is a really important word to talk about. And that's going to be off on its own, actually. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to set up a thing over here. We're going to put the word sham in. Now, this will have a title eventually, but I don't want to. Once we have enough things in that category, we will be able to give it a title. After that, a whole bunch of these I think actually go together. Punishment, retribution, guilt, and innocence. I think all of those go together. So I'm going to copy and paste those. Those go in a different category than sham. So we're going to make a new one here. We'll leave this one over here. Okay. Now, next set of 10 words. There's some overlap here. Look. We've got punishment is there. But also legality. So we'll put that one in as well. We're going to add legality over here. That fits. Then there's some others that seem, I think they belong in a different category, but they're on the same list. Fairness, honesty, equality, decency, rights. Let's look at those. Copy. We'll put these over here. Oh, we don't want them in the title. Want them down there. Okay. We're going to have to skip over some, but there's going to be a fair amount of overlap anyway. Look at this one. Morals, power, doing what's right, equality, responsibility, law, rightfulness. So law, for instance, looks like it belongs over here. Accountability, I think, belongs over here as well. Let's go ahead and put that one in this category. Accountability. Power. Power is a good word. We always have to be thinking about power because anytime we're in the social world, we're dealing with power. This might be controversial, but I'm going to put power next to sham. All right. Oh, look here. Okay, so here, this one is from Zachary. We've got more that overlap here, right? Fairness and fairness. Morality definitely belongs over here. Equality is there. That's a category. Laws, that one goes over here probably, but maybe not. I don't know. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Karma is a good one, and you know where I'm going to put it? I'm actually going to put it over here. Karma. Right. Honesty, I'm going to put over here. Impartiality. Now, I'm actually going to put this one here, and then I'm going to start to show my hand. So a lot of the words in this category here, punishment, retribution, innocence, guilt, these are all associated with what we would call criminal justice. And it makes sense to have that one of your first associations with the word justice would be criminal justice. After all, that when you're out in the world and you're dealing with the police or the courts or whatever, those are the first people you encounter when you're dealing with justice. And criminal justice all has a certain thing in common. It's all about what happens when someone does something wrong or something that someone thinks is wrong. So that's why I included karma here too, under criminal justice. Karma is not supposed to be something that comes from the police. Karma comes from the universe. But as we understand it in America, as the idea has been imported from India, it's still a matter of your payback for doing something wrong, right? It's not necessarily the police, but the universe gives you payback for what you did. So all of that is much more narrow, I think, than the ideas over here with fairness, honesty, equality, decency, rights. These are bigger level concepts. I'm going to label these. There's a philosophical tradition around talking about justice that talks about justice as fairness. A crucial idea with justice is that being just means being fair. Those are like synonyms in some sense. So I think justice as fairness might be a higher level, more abstract idea than the criminal justice, which is something we just see in the world around us. All right, let's talk about sham. Right away, I said justice and someone said sham. That's really cynical, and with good reason, right? I imagine this association exists because a lot of the time when you hear people talking about justice, what you see them actually doing is, well, power. That is, advancing their own self-interest, maintaining their own power, doing something for the sake of power. This helps us get to a distinction that's going to be important in everything we do between what philosophers call the descriptive and the normative. And the easiest way to understand this difference is that the descriptive is the way the world is, and the normative is the way the world ought to be. And so, on a really basic level, every statement you make can either be descriptive or normative. You are either talking about the way things are or the way things should be. I want to note that the word sham actually has a normative component. When you call something a sham, you're implicitly saying that it's morally wrong, right? It's an accusation of hypocrisy. So already, in calling something a sham, you are engaged in a moral language. So right away we can begin to say that although the things we see in the world done in the name of justice may not be just, they may not be morally good, even when we call them a sham, we are still actually caught up in a dialogue around justice, the nature of justice. Okay, so in the next slide, I want to show you some ideas from an ancient philosopher named Aristotle, an ancient Greek philosopher, which I think will help us understand what's really going on here. Aristotle started by saying that in the abstract sense, justice is simply treating similar cases similarly. That's an odd phrase, but if you think about it, it really makes sense. Justice is the business of being morally consistent. If two people commit the same crime in the same kind of contexts, they should get the same punishment. If two people do the same kind of work in a class, they should get the same rewards. So if you both answer A on a multiple choice question, you should both either get it right or both get it wrong. And external factors, like whether or not you have paid the instructor a bribe, shouldn't affect these things, right? So in the abstract, justice is simply treating similar cases similarly. But generally, we need to specify what counts as similar. And in fact, this will change over time. Aristotle took it for granted that you should treat men different than women, and Greeks different than foreigners, and citizens differently than slaves, right? Those were all things that he thought counted as relevant when deciding what is a similar case. So for Aristotle, two murders are not the same if one was committed by a citizen and one was committed by a slave. But we don't think that way anymore, right? So we need to define for ourselves what counts as similar and not use Aristotle's notion. That brings us to what Aristotle calls justice in context. Justice in context happens once you decide what counts as similar. And then again, we've got another distinction. Rectifying justice versus distributive justice. Rectifying justice is justice that happens when something has gone wrong in society. So if a lot of your associations with the term justice are with criminal justice, that means you're thinking about rectifying justice. This is justice where something has gone wrong. The contrast to rectifying justice is distributive justice. Distributive justice is justice in the ordinary workings of society. That is, justice when things haven't gone wrong. The fairness of things that are supposed to happen. So every society has a certain amount of burdens and benefits. There are burdens. There's work that needs to be done. The machines need to be kept running. the crops need to be planted and harvested, brought to the store. All of that is the work of society. There are also benefits to society. People get, they get food and energy and shelter, and some people get ownership of mansions and rockets and things like that. And so how these burdens and benefits are distributed is the business of distributive justice. Rights and a say in the running of government also counts as a part of distributive justice, because that's one of the benefits of a society is being able to control what happens to you. So when we were looking at criminal justice, we were looking at rectifying justice. When we looked at more abstract ideas like fairness, equality, honesty, that sort of thing, we're really, I think, trying to get at the notion of formal justice, just justice in the most abstract sense. And then distributive justice is a whole nother topic, right? That is actually going to be a big focus for what we're doing. I should also mention, again, the idea that justice is a sham. This might come up again if you think about what when Aristotle said that two murders are different if one is committed by a slave and one is committed by a citizen. And I said, oh, well, we don't think that anymore. Well, looking at what happens in Kenosha, maybe you're thinking, well, we do think that, right? Murders do seem to be different if they're committed by white people or black people. And that's, again, true. But that is, we need to return to the distinction between the way things are and the way things ought to be, right? And for right now, at least, we are attempting to understand justice as it ought to be. And I think we can all intuitively say that we ought not to treat those two murders as the same, right? So that's going to be our focus going forward. We're going to be talking about distributive justice. So the next reading and exercise is a little bit farther away from what we've been talking about. I'm going to talk about, it's an exercise on the nature of argument and reasoning. And I've got an excerpt from some critical thinking book that I use, a critical thinking book that I actually use in all my classes. Then after that, we're going to return to an essay about eviction. We're going to look at an essay called Political Responsibility and Structural Injustice.